Hello and welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk with Encore. Well, today we're going to be discussing the Skilled Nursing Facility 5-Probe and Educate Review program that's currently taking place. As a brief overview for those who are not familiar with the topic, the basic premise is that SNFs throughout the country are all in line to have a sampling of their patient cases reviewed by the CMS MACs. Well, then after the chart reviews have been completed, facilities that have had items identified as areas of improvement, they're then going to be offered education to address errors and help them avoid denials and adjustments in the future. Well, joining us today to share her knowledge and experience with Medicare audits and chart reviews is Pam Boldry. And Pam is the lead appeals management specialist for Encore Rehabilitation. Thank you, Pam, so much for being here today. We know that you're going to have a lot of great insight into today's topic. So thanks again.
Hello, thank you for having me. The majority of our department's role at Encore is to assist our customers every step of the way during any audits or medical reviews they may receive, and to conduct appeals should any claims be denied following review. So once an audit request is received, we're going to assist with gathering the needed documentation for the request and reviewing that documentation prior to submission so we can really take a look and review if it supports what was billed.
Can you tell us a little bit about the purpose behind this probe, where it's coming from, and how is this plan different than previous targeted probes?
Well, CMS has stated that the goal here is to help SNFs understand how to bill appropriately under PDPM. They believe that with the change in payment model from RUG to PDPM, there was misunderstanding by providers about how to bill appropriately, and that contributed to an increase in improper payment findings. This 5-claim probe and review, educate review is different from their ongoing targeted probe and educate or TPE reviews, because instead of the 20 to 40 charts that can be requested per round and can potentially take place over 3 rounds with a TPE, this will be a review of just 5 claims from each SNF and will be completed in just 1 round. The claims they're going to select for these 5-claim probe reviews will be prepayment reviews, unless a provider specifically requests a post-pay review in cases where it would cause them financial hardship. This probe will affect claims for services furnished after October 1st, 2019, except for those claims that contain a COVID diagnosis. Those will be excluded from the review. Another thing that I think it's important to mention is that with the TPE notices, those notice letters advise that providers could request an extension for additional time to respond to the request. With these 5-claim probe reviews, that option has been removed from the notices. So it's important that the records are received by the requester by that 45-day deadline listed in the letter.
Yeah, I'm looking at what CMS has put out. They're really targeting those case mix group financial indicators. And so when facilities are pulling that record together and hopefully putting the skill letter on top of that record, how would you help them to highlight those case mix group documents or to make sure that CMS can see their thought process?
Sure. The major thing that helps is taking a look at the top reasons for denials to try to avoid those errors when they're submitting their documents. The number 1 cause for denial is missing documentation. It's really important that all of the records to support the codes billed are included in the submission. I think sometimes providers may take an approach similar to a surveyor requesting information. So maybe they're only including what's listed on the request, but nothing additional. Here, we want to provide all documentation that's pertinent to support the claim. So that may include documents that aren't specifically listed, or maybe records from outside the windows of the dates of service under review. So for instance, if records are requested for December 2022 dates of service, but the patient was admitted in November, you would want to make sure that much of that November information is included. You know, things such as the initial signed therapy evaluations, the admission orders, documents from the hospital stay that preceded admission, that GG information that's gathered in the first 3 days of the stay, anything that's needed to validate what was billed on the claim. Another denial reason is that the HIPS level billed isn't supported in the record. So they're looking to see if the primary and other diagnoses coded on the MDS meet the definition in the MDS manual and are active and supported in the record. So they're looking to see if those GG scores are substantiated, if they're coding shortness of breath when lying flat, or isolation, or wounds. They're going to look to see if that criteria is present to support that coding in the record. Issues with certifications and signatures are a big reason for denial. Often documents are missing a physician's signature, or the signature is present but illegible, or maybe missing a date with the signature. So it's important to review the signed orders, the certifications, the therapy plans of care to make sure that information is present. If a signature is illegible, you'd want to include a signature log to go in with the response. If a physician's signature is missing or missing the date, or if a document is signed late, you would want to ensure that an attestation statement signed by the physician is included with the response to address it and explain what happened. You don't want to wait for that denial and then try to circle back on appeal and explain that. Other denials occur because the facility certification recertification form isn't filled out completely. The form should include all the required components. So, of course, the patient identifiers, the reason for the SNF stay, the estimated period of SNF care needed, any plans for post-SNF care, and if the continued care is for the same condition for which the patient was hospitalized, in addition, of course, to being signed legibly and dated timely by the physician.
Well, there's certainly a lot of things for us to be aware of based on what you're sharing with us. And it's all based on obviously your experience working within the appeals department and things that you've seen, come across your table with regard to appeals and reviews and whatnot, not only by Medicare, but from other, providers as well. Well, I do want to ask though, there's such a small sample size. There's only 5 patient charts that are going to be reviewed. So what do you anticipate is going to be happening based on the results of those chart reviews that are completed?
Good question. Well, after the review is complete, the SNF is going to receive a detailed result letter. They'll get that letter whether there were errors found or not. So if no errors were found, they'll also get a letter. If the provider is found to have an error rate of 20% or less, so 1 out of 5 charts were in error, the Medicare administrative contractor will provide some general broad education with an option for the provider to receive one-on-one education if they desire, and they'll provide a contact to coordinate that. If a SNP is found to have an over 20% error rate, so 2 or more out of the 5 were in error, one-to-one education will be set up by the Medicare administrative contractor. During this one-to-one education, the specific findings for that SNF's claim errors will be discussed, and the providers will have an opportunity to ask questions and get feedback with the intention of helping them avoid those types of errors going forward. Claims that do result in downcoding or that are denied will be adjusted then by the MAC. One thing to note also is that if a SNF ends up with 5 out of 5 claims in error, they will be prioritized for a subsequent TPE review. So going through those 20 to 40 requests at a time, possibly up to 3 rounds. So ensuring that all the components are present prior to submission really can't be emphasized enough.
And based on things that we're hearing and seeing from CMS, we know that they're really looking at those opportunities that, whether it's therapy clinicians or other medical providers within the facilities have, is to really make sure that they're beefing up their documentation to support things like case mix group, making sure the orders are in place, making sure we've got our detailed plans of care. So it's really on all of us, all of the team members within these facilities to make sure that we are, contributing to the medical record and really being diligent and making sure our skilled interventions are put there in place and certainly support the services that we're providing. Well, I want to thank Pam Boldry for joining us today, and I also want to thank everyone for listening in today. We look forward to having you tune in again for our next episode of Coffee Talk with Encore.